So I'll call the meeting to order at 6:30. So Dr. Burnham, you go first.
As a preliminary matter, this is Dr. Burnham, Superintendent of Schools. I will do a roll call to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Chairperson Schroka,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Bertrand,
Yes.
Secretary Leighton,
Yes.
Mr. Levesque,
Yes.
not with us yet. Mrs. Archambault?
Yes.
Okay. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. There we go. Recording Secretary, Miss Sue Summers is not with us yet. Business Manager, Mr. Cassidy.
Yes.
Director of Special Services, Mrs. Hanscom.
Yes.
LMHS Social Worker, Jamie Millett.
Yes.
And our Nursing Coordinator, Carolyn Finch.
Yes.
Now I'll turn that back to you, Mrs. Schroka.
Thank you. Good evening. In accordance with the requirements of open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel at a later time. And this meeting of the Lunenburg School Committee is being conducted remotely. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 coronavirus, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread, and all town facilities are currently closed to the public. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A subsection 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town website on the COVID-19 Information Center page, accessed through the town manager's webpage, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Lunenburg School Committee is convening by telephone conference, video conference via Zoom app, as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item of the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, Heather Soroka, the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. And if members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, I will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. So first item of business is the chair's report, and we received an email. We are going to have to start working on the superintendent's evaluation process. I believe we all received an email and guidelines in regards to that. And I believe that the superintendent is well on her way to creating a document so that we can evaluate her in a timely manner before I believe maybe the election cycle, because it is delayed this year. I feel that we could do that confidently, don't you, Dr. Burnham?
I do.
Yeah. I think that you have your evidence that supports all of your work. You're very organized, so I think that we can do that before. And what we're talking about a date, and we will be set. So I think we were talking about the second one in June, right?
I think
Have that
so.
done by. So I would like everyone to take a look at the evaluation packages and work on those and give me feedback so that I can put it all in to a package that we could look at together. And then we will be doing that we will be presenting her evaluation on the June 17th meeting. Okay. Yeah, good?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you have
Oh,
a
welcome, Jim
preference?
is here. Jim is here.
Did you have a preference as to
I
which
am here, yes.
rubric you prefer to work with?
Which one?
Which rubric you prefer to work with, the original or the draft?
No, because, well, I'm used to working with the original.
Okay,
Okay. So only because that's the one we've had for so long.
I would say that the original one is very close in setup to the second one. And it also doesn't deal in quite so much minutia. The second
Right.
doesn't.
Oh,
So
it doesn't? Okay.
it may be time expedient
To use the second
for
one?
the superintendent to use the second one. What do you think, Dr. Burnham?
I would tend to agree. I recall last year when we went through it, to your point, there's an awful lot of detail in the
Yeah.
original rubric, and many of you felt that you didn't have that depth of knowledge as to what I was doing with principles, et cetera. And you had some good questions, and I was able to give you responses and evidence of that kind of work. I would agree that the new draft is probably a little bit more user-friendly.
Yes, I think so.
But I'm fine with either.
Well, are they suggesting that we go with the new draft? Is that what they had suggested for when in creating it? I thought that there was a whole new system for doing superintendent's evaluations anyway.
So I know that there were some districts that agreed to pilot it.
Yeah,
Um,
they haven't, well, with everything that's going on.
Right.
Um,
That said, you
yeah.
know, the ratings is still around the 4 standards and the goals.
Okay.
Right.
So honestly, I don't necessarily have a preference. I think that the revised version is helpful. And perhaps even if we don't use the revised new draft of the rubric, it might be helpful to the school committee members in a crosswalk, if you will. If you're looking at the original and you're thinking, well, what should I be looking for? What does this mean? You can take a crosswalk on over to the revised draft,
Uh-huh.
and that gives you a little bit better guidance, I think, as to what sorts of things you'd be looking for.
You can still look at both, though. You can look at both, but so do you want us to fill out the new draft? That's the one they're piloting?
I don't know, I'd like maybe for the other members
Yeah,
to weigh in.
Wendy?
I think that the second one. That we should be
The
getting
new-
to. Oh. Am I unmuted?
No, you're there. Can you hear me? So you think that we should use the one that they started with the pilot?
Yes.
Brian?
I looked quickly and it did seem a little bit simpler.
I could go either way, but I think it makes sense to go with the newer one.
The newer one. Where did Jim go?
I had to switch my camera. My computer was freezing up.
You have a
So,
preference?
no, I don't have a preference. I think the second one probably makes sense as well.
Okay. So we'll just use the second one. Now, the other one is available. They were both in the email.
Yes,
Yes.
So you can look at it.
yes.
And, so just for reference, but we will be filling in the second one. So when you start to work on it and you're done and you send it to me so I can compile the whole thing and then send it back out to you guys, use the second one.
Okay,
Okay?
sounds good.
Okay. And now, so that, because we want to have that ready for the second meeting in June. Okay, so that's a little, about a month. Okay, so now we have a presentation, the universal screening presentation. So I think they're all here, right? Juliana, Carolyn, and Jamie.
Right. So, we were asked while we were working and operating our meetings remotely to stay to the essential business.
Yeah.
But this is, I think, a little bit of that essential business,
Oh, I saw it. It's definitely essential.
Yes.
which is why I thought that this was an important presentation for everybody to have tonight. So
Yeah.
I'm going to turn this over to Jamie Millett, Carolyn Finch, and Juliana Hanscom.
Okay.
You should have the capacity to share a screen.
Oh, is that okay? All right. Yeah, I can definitely pop that up. You'd think I'd have this figured out by now. I've been using Zoom enough. Why is it not coming up? Here we go. All right. So can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, perfect. So I'll just go through a full present, and we'll run through it. Thanks for having us. I appreciate all that you guys are doing and hanging in there through this crazy new remote world that we're living in. I'm excited to have the opportunity to share this information because I was afraid it was going to get lost with the school closure. I had shared this information with high school administration in March, right before we got shut down. And unfortunately, we haven't really had an opportunity to process it and figure out what to do with it. And it's definitely relevant as to planning for next year, especially after, being out of school now for, I think we're gonna be at 6 months total. So to give you guys a quick overview, and I know I had presented on what the plan was, I think back in the winter, maybe December or January. So we ran the screenings with grades 9 through 12. So we had a total of 383 students screened. Parents were received a letter where they could opt out if they wanted to. We did not have many kids opt out. We actually only had 11 students. So if you look at that out of the total percentage of students that we screened, it was less than 3%. So most of our students took the screening. Now that doesn't necessarily account for students that were absent. But the ones that were absent, they still received the link, and we found that many students actually filled it out. They just did it a day later, even though they weren't in school. But there were a few kids who saw it, chose not to do it, and it's not something that was mandatory. So that's definitely, there's a few others, I guess, in terms of numbers that we may have missed. We used Tuesdays during advisory time, and the screeners were sent out via email, and they were done on a Google form. We used the GAD-7, which is an anxiety scale, and the PHQ-9, which is a depression scale. Both are evidence-based clinical scales. They're not necessarily used for diagnostic purposes, but they definitely help guide a clinician in determining whether someone is suffering from a diagnosable anxiety or depression, but it's more of a symptom indicator. And I actually have a slide in a few that you guys can take a look at the questions. All information was confidential. It obviously was not anonymous because we did follow up with students, and it does not become part of the student record. So once we receive the information, we follow up, it's gone. It doesn't become permanent in terms of a record or anything like that. The best part about this, cost to the district, absolutely nothing. So I know you guys love to hear that. No cost. Here's a slide here that just goes through what the screeners were. If you Google them, they're readily available. They're free. They were used by clinicians across the country. They're used by doctors. There's a couple of variations, but we went with the 7-question GAD for anxiety and the 9-question PHQ for depression. So I'll give you guys a moment just to look at that. You can see at the bottom of the GAD-7, it asks how difficult these problems have made it for you. And we did ask that question on both scales. So we did receive some feedback from students on that. It doesn't necessarily get incorporated in the final score, but it does give us an indication of, where they're at and how much it's really bothering their day-to-day functioning. So for the sake of time, I'll move on, but I will make sure that this gets shared with everybody. So the follow-up procedure. We want to make sure that we did this with integrity. So our support staff that was established for follow-up included myself, our school psychologist, Carolyn Finch, who's a high school nurse, and then also all of our high school guidance and counseling staff. Everybody was trained in motivational interviewing. I actually had found a free webinar that we all watched. Basically, motivational interviewing is a clinical skill where you elicit behavior change. And it's really just a way to guide conversation with adolescents or adults. Rather than telling people what to do, it's trying to help them process where they can make changes in their life that would better affect them. So for the sake of this, it's really talking about what are the next steps? What do you think that you need to do to help yourself feel better? By no means was the follow-up to tell kids that they have to go to therapy, they have to receive mental health services. For anyone with teenagers, you know that when you tell them to do something, they're far less likely to do it anyways. So I'm sure most of you do motivational interviewing with your teenagers all of the time. But you want to make sure that they come to an understanding of what makes sense for them and what's going to help them. If they don't want to do it, they don't buy into it, we're not forcing anybody to do anything. Students that did not have any outpatient services, they did receive interface. We sent them home with that information. Again, it was not something that we said they had to do. It was just a resource. We explained it. We sent them home with it. The follow-up questions that we really looked at: do you have outside therapeutic services? That includes counseling, medication management, in-home services, anything like that. If you don't have it now, a lot of times conversations were, have you had in the past? Do you have a trusted adult at home that you can talk to? And then do you have a trusted adult at school you can talk to? And going back to that winter presentation that we did, Carolyn Finch and Sue Cavioli spoke a little bit to their wellness survey and the need for making sure these kids have connected adults in the building. So that's why we felt like this was a very important question to ask, to make sure our most vulnerable students have somebody that they can talk to. So looking at the scores, we determined that anyone with a moderate or severe anxiety or moderate, severe, or severe depression were the ones that we needed to follow up with based on their score. So we categorized them, we ran through the scores every single day. We did each grade on a separate day. We went through all the Google Forms. We're able to calculate scores pretty quickly, and then followed up with the kids in the severe anxiety or severe depression in the same day. So we made sure that we got to those kids by the end of the school day. For those with moderate anxiety or moderate severe depression, we really looked at it by a case-by-case basis. Some followed up with same day. Some we actually ended up waiting to follow up with the following day. Either way, every single student was followed up with within 24 hours. So looking at the data, I mean, this is the important stuff that we saw. So you can see over here on the left is just the graph or the chart that we have in terms of how many students we needed to follow up with. So, the average was kind of 26, 27 kids. The 10th grade class did have an extraordinary amount. We had close to 50 kids that needed follow up. And you can see that overall, there was a lot of anxiety or a combination of high scores of depression and anxiety. Strictly kids who screened in for just depression were pretty low. And then we did have some kids that reported some safety concerns that we needed to follow up with immediately. Again, just another way to look at by each grade level, where we were at for follow-ups. We had 33.78%, so almost 34% of the student body population at Lunenburg High School required follow-up, which is pretty significant. This definitely worries me with the transition in the fall and the need that we're gonna have for making sure that we address SEL needs for these kids first and foremost. just to give you guys an idea of where we stack up. So national statistics, about 1 in 5 or 20% of adolescents have a diagnosable mental health disorder. So we actually were a little bit higher than the national average on that. Again, just another graph to look at each grade level based on scores. That light blue is that moderate anxiety level, and you can see that was the winner in pretty much every single grade level. So overall, I would infer that we have a lot of anxious kids. Depression's still there too, but most kids are suffering from severe or moderate levels of anxiety, at least the ones that we needed to follow up with. All right, I'll let Finchy jump in for some of the follow-up data that we had.
Okay, so the follow-up data, the first thing that we wanted to address was, as you can see here, 68.4% of the students did not have an outside provider. So when you look at the national statistic that 50% of youth with a diagnosable mental health disorder do not receive treatment, we're actually above that number. So that's concerning and something that needs to be followed up with to make sure we can get these students to be connected with an outside provider on a regular basis. One of the bright things that we found in the data was that 94.7% reported that they had a trusted adult at home, which I thought was really nice to see, especially considering the fact that during school closure, that's where a lot of these students were, obviously, was at home. So it was great to see that pretty much 95% of our students felt that they had a trusted adult in their home, which is very comforting. However, again, we keep finding this data point of all these students, 30.5% of students did not have a trusted adult in our school, which I keep, feeling is just so disturbing, and it keeps coming up on different surveys that we've done with students. And here it comes up again in this universal mental health screening and in the follow-up that we have with students. So again, that's a concerning point. The students that we already have on our radar, we have 13.2% of our students that are on a 504 that do have an identifiable mental health diagnosis. And we have 6.2% of our students on an IEP with a known mental health diagnosis or a social emotional disability. So we do already have some of these students on our radar and getting services through the school. Can you switch this slide, I guess, Jamie? There we go, perfect. So our last thing that we wanted to point out is, so, what does this all mean? Like, what do we do with this? What's the take home? So the points of reflection, the very first one is the importance of our school culture and our climate. It's like, again, I think the biggest challenge, we've talked about this before, about how do we establish a climate of care in our schools that can make such a huge difference. One of the things that we noticed with this screening was that we needed to, as you saw, meet one-on-one with several students, and in order to pull them out of classes to be able to meet with them was a major challenge that we need to recognize going forward. If we were to do this again, we probably need to have more conversations with teachers to make it a little bit easier and be more collaborative about having them come out of a class in order to meet with them and make it more confidential. But that was clearly something that we noticed as a challenge when we did the one-to-one meetings with the students. The second point of reflection, the implementation of an additional tier 1 or 2 interventions. It's pretty clear, as you can all see, that we have a need for improved behavioral health support based on the data here. The question is, how do we implement improved interventions to support more of our students? How do we do that? That's a big question. And I think, again, this includes the importance of that teacher-student relationship, again, a big challenge. Number 3, the follow-ups. Do we offer weekly follow-ups for students who need it? What staff do we use to do this? Do we consider offering maybe some small groups such as DBT or CBT? Also, the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is, again, I think Lunenburg was a little bit ahead of the curve, which I think we can thank Jamie for, in the fact that we already had this data so that when the school closed, we could use this data to identify students who were much more at risk and needed for us to reach out to them. So those students that we had already had those one-to-one sessions with following this screening, we were able to then reach out to them again now that they were home and not in school, and make sure that they were doing okay. So that was, again, very helpful to have that data. And then the last point of reflection, the staff self-care. Following up with these students was incredibly emotionally draining. It was really, really tough to hear a lot of the struggles that these kids had in their lives. It's also hard to listen to the fact that a lot of their struggles were brought on by stress or anxiety from school. So that was very emotionally draining for us as those of us that met with the students. So that was something we had to pay attention to and take care of ourselves. I think that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, no, I think those, that last point that Carolyn brings up, I don't think I anticipated how draining it was going to be. You know, I've worked in mental health care for a while, and I used to do outpatient services and see like 8 to 10 clients in a day. And I was having 8 to 10 conversations with students, and I was really surprised by, you know, some of the students I ended up talking to for like a half an hour. You know, and it was, yeah, it was heartbreaking, some of the things that you heard from these students. And it was really nice to connect with some of these kids. You know, it's a positive that I typically don't get to see. A few of them were like, we had no idea you existed, didn't know what your job was, what you do here, you know, which is, you know, I get that a lot from kids. They're like, they have no idea what my role is. And, you know, I had a couple students were like, that's really awesome that we have you. I wish I knew you existed before, you know, so there was definitely some positives to take away from it, but it was emotionally draining for sure. And I didn't anticipate how much it was going to be, especially that day that we did the 10th grade with 50 kids to follow up with. It was a lot.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
so again, I mean, going back to what this means for the fall, I think that we need to be really mindful and thoughtful in how we figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to help support some of these kids in the fall. I anticipate that those kids that we identified are going to struggle. There's also going to be a lot more that struggle. It may not even be the kids that we see. You know, right now we're tracking kids who aren't showing up to Google Classrooms or doing their academic work. And there's lots of kids that are doing their academic work but are still struggling. And they're going to struggle with the transition going back. You know, I think some of us adults are going to struggle having to go back to work, right, and get back in that routine, never mind the kids. So the Behavioral Health Advisory Council is going to start putting together, you know, some recommendations for teachers and for the buildings. Unfortunately, we can't really get ahead of ourselves too much because we don't know what the fall is going to look like. So we're kind of in the initial planning phases, and, you know, hopefully in the next few weeks, we can get a little bit more, you know, concrete, like a guide that can go out to staff and really tie down some procedures and follow-ups that we can do for students to really meet those tier 1 and tier 2 interventions that are desperately needed before COVID, and now even more so.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions? Anyone have any questions on the board?
Mr. Lebeck?
Wendy?
When you said you had reached out to students once the closure had happened, how did you do that? Was that via email? And was that through you or through school counselors, the guidance counselors, or?
So the way that we did it was when the student was identified as somebody who scored high enough that they should have a follow-up with a staff member, we had like a command center sort of set up with all that data, and we decided who made the most sense, who already had a relationship with that student, whether it would be their school counselor or myself or whoever. So we identified who that should be. So then in the closure, whoever that identified person was, that's the person who reached out to that particular student, and we did it through email. And it was, I'm telling you, it was very rewarding. I can say personally, like the students that I reached out to, they were so appreciative, and it was very meaningful.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
And it was for just the students that were identified in this, in your survey. in your questionnaire, correct? It wasn't anybody, you didn't reach out to all the kids individually, just the ones that you needed to follow up with?
Well, we only reached out to those students that were in this, that scored higher on this mental health screening that we had already, followed up with once. But there were other students that were reached out to for other reasons other than this purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This is Brian Laitman. I had a question, just kind of a follow-up to that. I teach high school as well, and I feel like a lot of times students want to go see their counselor for lots of different reasons. Is there a way that students can reach out to their counselors now? And can you kind of go into depth in that?
Yeah, we the high school guidance office has open office hours right now. We also, went through the entire process in that first initial weeks where we, consulted legal and came up with the proper consents so that, students could meet, even just like my caseload, so that I could essentially start doing telehealth services from home with my kids. And then that ended up extending to all counselors throughout the district. So at the high school level, we have open office hours. Kids also have the ability to connect with their counselor, send an email and say, hey, I'd like to set up a one-to-one. The only requirement is that we get that consent signed by a parent to have that one-to-one. But yeah, kids have access to us for sure. Definitely have made the shift to telehealth, which has been new to me, that's for sure, and everybody else, but we're making it work.
And we're doing that district-wide, not just at the high school.
Okay. Now, the consent for the one-to-ones that need to be signed by parents, how does a parent find that consent? Is it online? Were they emailed?
They were emailed out, yep. So for my caseload, I made sure that all my parents received a copy, but guidance sent them out as well to all the students.
I'm just wondering, because there's so many emails that go out.
Oh, I know.
If it was lost in the email, is there somewhere online that they can find it? Because you might want to just have it signed by a parent so that if the student wanted to reach out, they don't actually have to go to their parent right when they want to reach out, that it's already on file.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know if it's on the website. I guess I would have to follow up with one of our admin on that.
Because they might want to talk to you confidentially, but the parent has to sign. And so now they have to go and ask their parent, and maybe they don't want to talk to their parent about what they want to talk to you about.
Correct.
So that might just be some paperwork that parents fill out right away, maybe next year, as part of the stuff that we have to sign, so that if a student does want to reach out, they have that opportunity to do it confidentially, because it's like, it's interesting to me that we have to sign off on that, but not medical records. That we would have to sign off on that, the consent to talk to a guidance counselor one-on-one. But if we could put it on the website, that would be great for parents to have access to, and just make people aware that they actually have to assign that if their kid wants to reach out to guidance and have a one-on-one.
That's a fair point. Yeah, we can definitely follow up.
Okay.
Mhm.
We're also using a consent form one-on-one, even for students who are looking to have one-on-one help from an academic teacher as well. It's more about the consent in this particular medium.
Right. But it's one of those things where a kid might not want to talk to their parent about what they want to talk to their guidance about.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
I have teenagers, sometimes maybe they don't want to talk to me. I ask them questions and they tell me it's none of my business. So, I want them to be able to feel comfortable, have this done, and then if they're having trouble at some point, go and just say, I want to have a one-on-one, and not have their parents all, worked up about nothing. Maybe it could be even nothing to us, but it is to them a big deal to have to ask.
And usually they don't. If it's during the school day, they could just go see their counselor.
Exactly,
So it is
right.
different.
And we would have no idea
Right.
that they went to see you unless you felt the need to reach out to us.
Right.
you know. So,
Yeah, that's definitely a barrier that we're trying to navigate in this
Right.
new online world, for sure.
so, okay, so that would be great if those could go up online and we could make parents more aware of that. And students as well, that they, you know, have the consent signed if they wanted to reach out to the guidance counselor to talk about something. If they're struggling, I know that as the year winds up, I think a lot of them are feeling a little bit more overloaded right now. And not with their workload, they're just a little stressed. They're tired of being home and not seeing their friends right now. I think a lot of them are struggling. So it would be nice to have their parents be made aware of this option if they missed it in the many emails that went out.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and they could have, because if it went out early, you know, everybody's gotten so many emails. It would just be maybe just a little bloop tomorrow or something. Do you think that's possible, Kate? Dr. Burnham?
Yeah, we can put something together
Okay,
and send it out.
okay. Just by itself too, maybe. Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I did. This is Jim Levesque. First of all, thank you for bringing this information to our attention and for doing this kind of research and being there for the students that you identified as needing some additional support. I am concerned, I think as you are, about the 30% or so that don't feel that there's a trusted adult in the school that they can talk to. I expressed that concern last time that statistic was brought up, and I was hoping that was an anomaly. It doesn't seem like it was, so I'd like to know, one, on that frame, how we plan to address that, and then on the second piece of the puzzle, we had quite a few students suffering from anxiety, and what are the plans for alleviating some of that anxiousness going forward? If we have that, have we delved into, have we gone deep enough to understand what the source of the anxiety is, or is it just an anxious feeling? Yes. And then if
those are great
gone
questions, Jim.
further, is there a plan? Thank you.
Yeah, no, those are great questions. So to speak to the first question with staff and making sure that we build that rapport and we have those trusted relationships, I think that goes back to that first point of reflection and just the school culture and climate, and making sure that staff are given the correct information and the right professional development, so that they, you know, understand that creating a safe and supportive and, you know, caring environment really needs to come first before any academic gains are met. You know, kids need to feel like they have people they can connect with, you know, whether it's in the classroom or coaching or in any sort of extracurricular. You know, time and time again, statistics show that when kids connect with that adult, they're going to go to extraordinary lengths to try and succeed. You know, not always going to succeed, but they're going to put in more effort. So making sure that we have that professional development piece. It's almost like that tier 1 intervention for staff. You know, we've done a tremendous amount of professional development around SEL, and I think we just need to continue to foster that culture where that's an expectation, you know, here in Lunenburg Public Schools, that, you know, student relationships come first. Academic success, that'll come second, but we need to make sure that we're taking care of these kids' SEL needs and creating those positive relationships. So, you know, we do have some plans for that for the fall as to what that looks like. I mean, who knows because of what's going to happen. But that's going to be even more relevant come the fall after having all this time away. You know, that really needs to be addressed first and foremost. So that will definitely be the push in the fall. So I guess stay tuned for more information on that. Juliana's got a hand up. I'll let her jump in.
Yeah.
Oh,
Muted. Is that you or?
All right. I unmuted and then I got muted and then I unmuted and now everybody can hear me. So Jim, I know we had talked to Jamie, I think it was a few BHAC meetings ago, about how we do have a forum at the high school with our advisory group to be able to have those smaller groups and reach out to kids, and that maybe we need to relook at that advisory and how it's run, and can it be tweaked or modified to maybe reach students in a better manner. So just to let you know, we do have something in place, which is great. We've got the advisory, but maybe we need to look at it and see if we need to have some more training around it, or if we need to tweak it a little bit to get more people involved or all on the same page and utilizing it that way. But I think having that advisory block is a great step in the right direction. I think now we just have some data to show that maybe we need to review it a little bit more and go a little deeper with it.
Right, good point. Yeah, the fact that we have that built in is just a time for, once we get staff on board, that's actually an awesome time to integrate some of that tier 1 and tier 2 support to kids in terms of just embedding SEL, curriculum essentially into advisory. And that can be as simple as self-awareness, coping skills, how to work well in a group, communication. I mean, the list goes on. And so that's a great forum for us to start doing some of that work. The other piece with the anxiety, I actually just read today that, teen anxiety has jumped up like 20% since 2007. And there's just a variety of reasons. It's like a lot of pressure for success can be part of it. Social media is definitely part of it. Just the constant and influx of information and news and everything else that's coming to these kids. We live in a world where kids, adults, we don't have to wait to go home to Google something. You want an answer, you have your phone at your fingertips and you find the information, which can be a blessing and a curse. Sometimes too much information can also cause anxiety too. So I think that there's a variety of reasons, but it's definitely something that we need to start looking at. And I think we'll address more through some tier 2, maybe some group work with kids, is to figure out what exactly is causing the anxiety. My best guess, being a mental health clinician in a high school setting, it's like the perfect storm of adolescence. You do have social media, technology, that's like a newer piece in the last, 5 years or so that's become more prevalent. But you have the social pressures, social identity, figuring out who you are, being uncomfortable and just, trying to work through that awkwardness of your adolescence. Emerging mental health, depression, anxiety tend to come up during your adolescent years. And intensify as you get into early adulthood. Then you have academic pressure, the list goes on and on. So I think there's a lot of factors, but hopefully by providing some more support via some tier 2 group work, we'll give kids better ability to cope. Because whether it's academics or it's outside of school factors, either way it affects them in school, and I think it's our responsibility to help these kids learn to cope, because this makes them, more productive members of society, and it keeps them, their well-being long-term is just going to be greater.
Do you have any other questions?
No, I appreciate the answer.
Yeah, and the report was good, and it's very timely because we will be dealing with more of this when we go to reopen in the fall, unfortunately. So thank you all for attending and doing the good work that has to be done. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too. We've come to the public comment for agenda items. Do we have anyone in the public who wants to make a comment on agenda items only? Do you see anyone?
I do not.
Or do I? Okay. So we have three warrants and line item transfers to approve.
Yes, you do have one line item transfer this evening.
Okay.
There's a request to move from the general supplies line to reading supplies in the amount of $2,000 at the primary school. This would be to purchase some additional Lucy Calkins phonics curriculum kits for kindergarten and first grade, as well as some Lucy Calkins kits for second grade to support the writing curriculum. And they've been preparing for professional development in this area next year. So to have these materials ready to coincide with the professional development that's planned for next year would be very, very beneficial.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions in regard to this line item transfer? No? No?
So this is Jim Levesque. I move that we authorize the line item transfer $2,000 from general supplies to reading supplies for the primary school.
Do I have a second? Carol?
Yep, Carol Ashambo, I'll second.
All in favor, roll call vote?
Mrs. Ashambo,
Yes,
Mrs. Bertrand,
Yes.
Mr. Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yes.
Mrs. Stroka.
Yes. We have minutes. Did I miss them?
I don't believe you have minutes in your folder
Okay, I
for
was
this
gonna
evening.
say they're on here, but I didn't remember seeing them. Okay.
no,
Okay, well, it wasn't missing. We'll move over that. So now, we'll expect them maybe the next time.
Yes, hopefully.
Okay, all right. Superintendent's report?
So an update relative to the CARES Act to support all things related to COVID-19. We did receive word through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that emergency relief funds for school districts to address the impact of COVID-19 through the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, which they're referring to as the ESSER Fund, which is authorized under the CARES Act, will be provided in the form of a grant. Funds may be used either in FY20 or FY21 for COVID-related costs. Lunenburg's allocation is approximately $198,000. The Federal Grants Office has been holding webinars to provide some more detailed information on this ESSA fund grant. Mr. Cassidy, Mrs. Hanscom, and I participated in a webinar last week. The funds must be used for COVID-related costs.
How do they define COVID-related costs?
Well, as an example, I don't think that we could hire a high school English teacher with this money
No.
because we have to make a direct connection back to the impact of COVID-19 for any of the expenditures.
So like a social worker or any, like with the mental health issue? that,
Potentially.
We might.
But it would also be a one-time cost as well.
Right, so so you'd have to figure out how you'd work that into the budget afterward.
Right.
Okay.
And they did there's a lot of details, so it's difficult to sum up quickly how this money can be spent. As an example, you can purchase, let's say, plexiglass screens for your reception areas.
Okay.
However, they have to be temporary. If you affix them in a way that's permanent, they won't cover that cost. So there are a lot of fine ins and outs as to what is and what is not allowable, which is why when you write the grant and you submit the grant, if you've included something in the grant that's not allowable, they're going to tell you that it's not allowable, and then you have to take a look and revise the grant and resubmit.
Oh, wow.
This
Yeah,
seems to make very little
As
sense.
I said, any of the federal grants are always, Title I as an example, always an awful lot of restrictions, a lot of paperwork maintenance, data collection, etc., go along with any of the federal grants. It's not as nice as they gave us a check for $198,000.
So can you affix the plexiglass with duct tape and not a screw? Considered temporary?
I think what some of them are thinking, like I've seen, and maybe Mr. Londa, if he can unmute himself. could jump in here. There are some places where they are suspending plexiglass screens maybe from the ceiling where it hangs down as a barrier. Other places, there might be a wooden footing that the plexiglass sits in, and that block of wood sits on the counter. But if you were to do some more permanent work on that, that's something that's not allowable.
So
Which
odd.
makes no sense because we don't know how long this thing is going to be around.
Correct.
So odd.
And it may not be COVID-19 next time. It may be something else. That just,
And I'd offer for.
I'll leave it to the federal government to screw things up.
Or at least make them a challenge.
Yeah.
If Mrs. Hanscom or Mr. Cassidy want to join in and have any comment relative to the fascinating webinar that we participated in, I would welcome their input.
I would just say, you know, the application is due at the end of June, and hopefully we can use that money to really support the local budget. And you know, there is a lot of uncertainty what some of the requirements will be at the state level as far as when kids start walking into school next year. So hopefully there's some clarity around that, and maybe some of those requirements are included in this grant. So, you know, we need a little time to kind of develop this grant application. I know I've got a webinar the first week in June, kind of a follow-up to that. So, you know, hopefully I'll have some additional information on what that necessarily looks like. So, so time is of the essence. I think it's really going to support our local budget. You know, I know a lot of the, just what I was hearing at some of the budget meetings is that, you know, where we're going to get the money to handle some of these costs. I think this might be a good opportunity to use this federal money to cover those costs. And we don't know what necessarily all those costs just yet. So I know I'm being vague, but there's a lot of plates spinning around right now, and we're really trying to manage them all as we move forward with the budget. So
And
that's all I've got to say, really.
And I can just say that from, because I have to submit a lot of grants, a lot of our special ed grants and the Title I grants. And I can say that DESE, the last couple of years, they've been really good to work with on these grants. So I'm not as nervous as I would have been in past years about, you know, when we're putting this together, that we're going to be hitting roadblocks and really having trouble getting stuff approved or whatever. Like I said, when I even had to call them about the Title I grant, and like, the lady returned my call within an hour, and then I submitted it and it was approved in the next couple of days. So they've been very responsive the last couple of years, which makes it a little less anxiety ridden for having to prepare these type of things. So even though it's a new grant and there are some very strict parameters, I'm hopeful that I get our Title I contact to be able to reach out to if we have any questions on this, because she's been really great to work with.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll continue on with the report. In terms of end of year preparations, all schools have cleared lockers, desks, and cubbies of students' personal items. These items have been bagged for each student. The schools have or are creating a schedule for students and/or parents to retrieve these personal items via curbside pickup. The plan with specific directions will be communicated to students and families by the school principal. When students and parents are picking up their belongings, they will also have the opportunity to return any school items they may have in their possession, such as textbooks, library books, etc., We will not be collecting Chromebooks as part of this particular pickup or drop-off. I'm working with IT regarding the return of Chromebooks. The only exception to this is the Chromebooks that are being returned by the senior class. That will be done, I believe the date is June 2nd. And we are also working on schedules that allow a limited number of staff at any one time to access the school to pack up their own belongings for the summer and prepare their rooms for the typical summer cleaning, where custodians empty the room of all the furniture, you know, strip and re-wax the floors, etc. You know, again, the typical summer clean, except that the teachers do have to take any items that are on their desk, off of their desk, and pack them either in drawers or boxes, so that when things are moved out of the classroom for cleaning, things don't go missing, they don't get broken, etc. Typically, the teachers might spend a day or 2 or 3 even at the end of the school year to take care of this. We're absolutely not going to be allowing them access for 2 or 3 days. At max, they will have one full day to access their classroom. There are other staff members that maybe have office space or paraprofessionals who may have, you know, a few personal items of their own at the building. Those folks won't be allowed access for the entire day because they don't need that much time. We're creating a shorter block schedule of time for those folks to come in. You know, we still have plenty of time to stagger this over the next couple of weeks so that we can get everybody into the building in low numbers, spread out in different areas of the building to minimize any chance of, you know, contact or interaction. And the administrators are in the building during these days to make sure that everybody is practicing the social distancing that they've been asked to practice while they're in the building. In terms of the state lifting restrictions, as you know, the governor outlined a multi-phase reopen. We have received an inquiry as to when the fields and the courts might reopen. And in consultation with Mr. Londa, our recommendation is that the tennis courts can open for singles play. The track and turf field, we think should wait until phase 2, because by opening the track, we are also opening the turf field, and it will be difficult to enforce social distancing on the field, particularly where it's not as visible from the road. We're also recommending that playgrounds and basketball courts open with phase 2. And as typical in the summer months, we would continue to keep the grass fields closed, because this is the time that we overseed and allow the grass field to recover from the heavy use of the fall and typically the spring season as well. But there is definitely heavy use in the fall even. So that's our recommendation. And I've shared that recommendation with the town manager as well, as they're trying to make decisions about what they will open for the community to access as well as part of the phased reopening. And lastly, Mr. Cassidy referred to this already, that we are still awaiting guidance from the commissioner as to the guidelines for reopening schools. In the meantime, we've been patiently waiting, but there's not a whole lot of time remaining to patiently wait. So I will be forming a reopening planning committee comprised of a variety of stakeholders and areas of expertise. And we will have some preliminary discussions and begin to discuss some possible models. However, you know, we're going to have to be compliant with whatever guidance or directives come from the state. So again, we can start some initial conversations and some ideas, But we really are not going to be able to move forward with expenditures until we really know what's being required of us by the state. And that's all I have for you this evening.
Thank you. So we'll go on to the first new business.
Chairperson Soroka,
Yeah.
I had a question
Yep.
regarding, is it okay to address Dr. Burnham?
Mhm.
As far as the tennis courts being opened, when is there a tentative date for that to happen? As you had mentioned, that would be something in phase 1
Next week.
next week.
And Mr. Wanda
And-
can weigh in here if that's not accurate, but that was our thinking next week.
Yeah, Tuesday we'd open them up.
Oh, the day after Memorial Day. Okay.
And then phase 2 target for courts, field, and playgrounds.
Correct. And at this time, we don't know
We
when
don't
phase
have a
2
date.
will begin.
Correct. Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying on that.
So first new business item, action item is Connor Lawrence Playground Dragon proposal. Who is going to be giving
So I'll
that?
turn this over now to Mr. Londa.
Yolanda.
Thank you. So what this is we have a dragon art piece that's on the Connor Lawrence playground. It's a piece of the original Kids Kingdom that was constructed in the playground back in the mid '80s. And when we were demoing the old playground, it was the only part that we kept, the original Kids Kingdom playground. It was dedicated to a community member. Unfortunately, I'm not sure the name. I know there was a small plaque somewhere as part of the dedication, but I haven't really come across that in the last year or so. But we still have it. It's still sturdy, good enough condition to stay there. It is in need of a paint job or some kind of refreshing. When we kept it as the art piece after the demolition of Kids Kingdom, it was painted green, and that's kind of the last time it got painted. So it's looking pretty faded. We've had a little bit of vandalism, spray painting on it, so it needs something. The proposal I have would be to try to open this as an opportunity for someone in the community that would be interested in taking this art piece and maybe reimagining what it might look like. So different colors potentially, maybe adding some durable material that would enhance it. So that's kind of the proposal, is try to open this up, see if we would be willing to open this up to have somebody from the community, refresh this and reimagine it. What if that's what we'd like to do? I would recommend that we put some school funding against it. I would propose like $120 for paint, some paint brushes as the artist stated they needed, and then access to school step ladders. So that's the basic proposal. The proposed timeline would be if this is something that we'd be willing to do or want to do, is to get word out to the community, probably through the Lunenburg Ledgers. I think is maybe a good way to do that. We might get some photos in the ledger and a brief description of what we're looking for. Ask for people to submit proposals, what they would like to do, some kind of sketch maybe, or something that would give us an idea of what they would do with it. And then, review those, around June 12th is, I think, when I would kind of look these back maybe from people. And if we got some, we would sort through them, maybe have a recommendation from one of the art teachers serve as kind of an advisor, and make a recommendation back to the school committee towards the mid part of June, and then allow the summer months of July and August as being a time to go ahead and do this little project. So that's the basis of this idea.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Wanda? Brian.
Yeah, thank you. So I love the idea. One concern that popped up for me was the ladders. I didn't know if there's any liability issues or if we had to check with legal about having artists use our ladders to climb up to do the art.
It's tall enough. You're gonna need probably an 8-foot step ladder. It's a pretty good sized piece of art. As far as the ladders, we have all of our ladders are inspected, and we could provide instructions to them about ladder safety because we do have a ladder safety program in the district. We've had people on ladders before on other projects, but this hadn't come up.
I can run it by legal though.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jim?
I would just like to, this is Jim Levesque, I'd just like to echo what Brian said. This sounds like a great opportunity to get the community involved. I love to see artist renderings of what they think they can do with things. It sounds like it sounds like a fun opportunity to brighten things up.
So we need to either, well, this is an action item, so we have to approve the project, correct? But do you want to do that, or do you want to hold off until we hear from legal? Brian?
I'm okay to.
You're okay to
move forward.
approve it, and then we'll get feedback from legal before they start to work on it? Okay. So I need a motion.
This is Carol Ashambo, and I will make a motion to approve the proposal to refurbish the Dragon on the playground, the Connell Lawrence playground, as presented.
This is
Brian
Jim Levesque,
Layton.
I'll second.
Brian?
Either one, Susan.
Yeah. Brian, you'll second it? Okay.
Yes.
So we need a roll call vote?
Mrs. Ashambo,
Yes,
Mrs. Bertrand,
Yes.
Mr. Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yes.
Mrs. Stroka.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Londa.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
ACE program proposal, I believe that's Mrs. Hanscom?
Yep.
Correct.
Correct.
So this was, boy, I was supposed to present this back in March. Juicy and fun in the district.
Oh, is that why it says February?
Yeah, it was back in February, and then I was on for the March school committee meeting, and then
Yeah.
everything broke loose. So I have been. We have our ACE program, which is our 18 to 22-year-old program, and since it moved over to TCP, we did file and get approved a few years ago for it to be listed as a public day program. So we're listed as a separate school, Lunenburg High School, middle school in Turkey Hill, and the primary school, which is great for us because it really helps when I'm bringing kids back from out of district programs to have that same distinction as a private day program, but a public day program in our school, and for helping kids transition back to the district before they turn 22, and then they're going to be in our community as young adults, correct? Right. So it's been a great program. It's serviced a lot of students throughout the years, but this year we've had a dip in enrollment. We do have a couple of pretty severe need students in there. So even though it's been a dip in enrollment, they've been keeping busy. But what I wanted to do is I reached out to some other special ed directors in the state to see about what do they do with their public day programs when there is a dip in enrollment. Do they tuition students in or not? And what are some pitfalls that may come with that, or what are some benefits? And overwhelmingly, the feedback that I got from other directors was that those of them that had these public day programs, a lot of them did tuition students into them for those times when they have those dips in enrollment, because it is advantageous to have more than 3 or 4 students in a classroom. You've got that synergy that comes off of just having a little bit of a larger group than 2 or 3 or 4 kids. And then it will bring in some extra revenue too, to be able to offset some of the costs for operating a program, because I still have to have a teacher, regardless if I have 2 kids in a program or if I have 5 or 6 in a program, and those opportunities too. So I know FLAC has an 18 to 22-year-old program, so I didn't want to take anything away from FLAC. So I talked to the board at the last couple meetings ago, and we were talking about scenarios and stuff. And I know that in our community, in our areas, North Middlesex, they tuition students into their 18 to 22-year-old program, and Clinton tuition students into their 18 to 22-year-old program. And just for a reference, Air Shirley does not have an 18 to 22-year-old program, so they send their students to North Middlesex usually, or FLAC. So the benefits of it, like I said, in addition to being able to add to just our student population in that classroom and have those kids, you know, learn from each other, and the financial piece of it, I think it's a great resource to have for families to be able to have another option, right? Because sometimes if they're in, say there was and I talked to Brad about this, he's the director from North Middlesex, and he says, yeah, if I have a family who for whatever reason, they've lost trust in my district, it would be great to have a town that's close where they could potentially go to your program, where they could maybe start fresh, have some new experiences, and vice versa, right? To be able to trade on and off with. So I reached out, I asked my colleagues about contracts, and Bridgewater Raynham had a couple of really nice contracts that they've used. And so I asked them if I could adapt them, and they let me adapt them because they've gone through all their legal ease with their attorneys. And I've got one for a summer program potential and also a school year potential. And the costs, that was when I asked around, the costs for how we charge, it's really a discussion between the business manager and the school committee and the superintendent, and seeing how we want to charge for those rates. So that's really up in the air, and I think that could be a conversation later on down the line. I know Clinton says that they break it down just like they do at the state level, even for custodial services, maintenance, secretarial services, and they really break down the cost and then do it per student. Some people said that if there was a one-to-one that was needed, that they hired the one-to-one in the district. Other districts said that they would have the sending district hire the one-to-one, but that it's really, we're outside of OSD, so we get to set our own rates if in fact we ever get to that point. And I don't have any kids on the horizon. I don't have anybody knocking on my door right now saying that they want to take advantage of Lunenburg ACE program, although they should, because it's a fantastic program and we have a great staff and it's in my building. So I love being able to visit it. It's awesome. But I just wanted to put this forward just in trying to be cognizant and trying to think ahead, because next year we've got 2 students aging out. We do have 2 students coming in, but it looks like next year right now, by November, December, we're going to be again at 3 students in the program. So I just want to be, I just want to be, you know, as transparent as I can with making sure that we have the best program possible and that it also is as robust as possible. So that was my proposal moving forward. Was that we consider
Okay, so we don't have to approve the contracts today, correct?
I don't think so. No. No.
That's the idea.
Unless, Kate, I don't know if you think that that's something that's got to be approved or not. I mean, I didn't run these contracts by our legal team.
Okay.
I took them from Bridgewater Raynham and I adapted them because I wanted to have just to see how they used it and what they did with it. I'm not even sure that North Middlesex has contracts per se. I haven't talked to Brad and I haven't gotten to that part of it with Brad yet. We could run it by legal as well, or we could wait until we got, I'd almost rather wait until we had somebody that may be interested and then invest the money to move forward.
Right.
Okay, that's a very good idea. That way we're not spending funds just in case.
Right.
But you want to approve the fact the the new ACE program proposal to let other people tuition in
Right.
so that we can start offering it to other school districts.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd just like to start putting it out there. You know,
Okay.
'cause a lot of times we're at a board meeting with the collaboratives, and somebody will mention a case or a family, and hey, does anybody have this kind of option? I'd like to be able to say, yeah, you know, we have a program that I'd like that you may want to come look at. And we have the flexibility with this type of a program. It's my understanding we have this kind of flexibility to see if it's a good fit or not. So unlike a school choice student,
Right.
this would be, I would see this as more of like a private school. Like we would ask for a packet, we would do an interview, we would see if it was a good fit for the students that we already had in the program.
Right, okay. That's good to know.
That's very good.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for Juliana? No? Wendy?
Is there typically, or has there been in the past, do you have a minimum students to maintain the program?
They say 2 to 3 can maintain a program.
Okay, that was my concern when you discussed.
Especially at this level, because if I had to place these students out, one of them would need a 2-to-1 staffing in whatever placement they were going at, and then you've got to talk about transportation, and then you've got to talk about transporting them to voc settings as well.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a different program, and we have the ability to be able to not only have a life skills component, but also have a component for those students who may have a diploma, but who still need additional skills to maybe access community college or transportation training. And so we've done that in the past as well for those kids who maybe need an extra year to be able to get some skills and before they've built up enough independence. And it's been really nice to be able to have that in Lunenburg for our students.
So basically next year though, we're going to be at the minimum.
Starting out, we will have the 5, but by November, December, we're going to have 2 that age out. So we'll be back down to 3.
And that was my concern, and that was why I was asking. I just was not certain, you know, with if there were minimum numbers, if that was going to put the program in jeopardy overall. So that was what was behind my question. So I think it's a fabulous thought.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
I think it benefits both sides.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'll take a motion to approve. Brian, you want to make it? Jump to your face on my.
The wording, yeah. Make a motion to approve the ACE program proposal as presented.
In a second.
This is Wendy Bertrand. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, we're going to have a roll call vote.
Mrs. Ashambo,
Yes,
Mrs. Bertrand,
Yes.
Mr. Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yes.
Mrs. Stroka.
Yes. Thank you, Juliana.
Thank you very much.
The next business is hiring recommendations and a hiring freeze. I think Mr. Cassidy?
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Ready? Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
What we have in front of you this evening is a request to temporarily lift the hiring freeze that the Lunenburg Public Schools has, as well as the town of Lunenburg. These are unique positions, and I want to talk about them generally, and we can get into some specifics if you would like. We've got 2 permanent positions that were recently vacated in the Lunenburg Public Schools. We've got a school technology coordinator position. And then we have an English teacher at Lunenburg High School. Both positions were budgeted in the local budget that was moved forward. The school technology coordinator is the position that is really working with our Chromebooks and managing those devices to get them ready for students. So really, if there's a critical need, it's definitely this year and over this summer. Secondly, is the English teacher at high school, just trying to maintain class sizes at this time and the need for that position. So those are the two permanent positions. Those are benefited positions. All the other ones are pretty unique, and I'll just touch upon them briefly. So there are there's four postings that I would like to release to the public, and they're basically substitutes. So it's our teachers and paraprofessional posting, nurses, CAF workers, and our extended day program. So this is what I'm asking the school committee to do is allow me to do this. This is really a business decision. This is something that most HR offices, business offices do every single year. We post positions and we provide reasonable assurances to our substitutes that we're going to hire them in the following school year. So what does that mean? That basically, the business matter to that is it doesn't allow them to collect unemployment over the summer. And why is that? Well, it's important because it reduces our costs. Secondly, it's not part of the job. It's something that they wouldn't be entitled to. So part of every school district is sending out reassurance letters at this time. So I'm sending out the reassurance letters. It's our practice within our reassurance letters is to direct them to our posting online just to update their information and reapply for the position. So that reduces our unemployment costs. So that's really what I'm after in those particular postings. There's also on the bottom of that memorandum, there's a number of instructional instructors. So those are our after-school music programs. Some of those instructors are now eligible for unemployment and so I want to get those reasonable assurance letters out. I want to redo the posting. So at least we can stop the unemployment over the summer, and we'll let the state make a determination based upon what September looks like. We don't know. We'll just have to deal with those costs when we come to it. So the biggie in this list is the 2-page list of internal stipends and advisors. So this is what the HR office normally does this time of year. We post all these advisor positions. And one thing I meant to say at the beginning of this conversation was, and it really comes up when we talk about these stipends and advisors positions. We're not making appointments. We're not really going to make appointments until we know exactly what the school year looks like next year. And if we do make appointments, there may be, looking at maybe mentoring positions. If a particular advisor or a particular stipend doesn't start at the beginning of the school year, then we're gonna prorate those stipends based upon the number of days that they actually interact with students. So this is just an exercise to get the positions posted, get interest, And depending on what September looks like, if we're all entering the building on September 1st, these advisors are ready to go to start these activities for students. That is really the intent here. Just kind of get these employees ready to go when the school starts. And if we start in October or November, these positions will be ready to go and welcome students at that time. So that is what, so I'm asking the school committee, number one, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Secondly, it's an action of the school committee to temporarily lift this freeze so I can post these positions.
The one question I have for you is the English teacher. I don't remember seeing that anywhere. To reduce class sizes at the high school. That's not regarding, that's not in relation to any retirements or anything?
That is a new retirement that we had just received this week.
Ah.
So I got the information on Monday.
Okay.
I think it was anticipated by some, and the HR office ultimately got the information on Monday, and we were able to incorporate that posting in this memorandum tonight.
Okay.
So,
That's what, I just wanted to make sure that was related.
Yeah.
To, not just, okay.
Chairperson Soroka, I had a question.
Yep, go Wendy.
So anywhere where there could be prorating in terms of position or you know, some sort of, you know, taking the position and modifying it, that is being made 100% upfront, particularly say for stipends, that those are things that could potentially be changed if we're only in for a partial year.
So what we've done this year is that there simply some advisors and some activities just could not run once the school closed. So it is our practice that we've prorated those stipends. I think you mentioned that. I will make it crystal clear when these postings go out that there'll be some sort of statement that if you know, the principal will determine when the activity starts. So that doesn't create any hard feelings. But you know, I can't imagine us not starting the school year or maybe even the summer without webmasters in our schools. So that one is not gonna, I can tell you, and our webmasters have been working very hard since the closure. So those are not prorated this year, and they will not be prorated next year.
No, and certainly not all.
Individually. And, you know, I've got to trust the principals that if they need a specific advisor for a group of students, I'm not going to get in their way. So we'll support them. But I like that idea. We'll do that. When you've seen my postings, I kind of capture them in an email. I'll have a disclaimer that protects the administration and the school committee if we have to do some proration of stipends.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Does anyone else have any more questions for Mr. Cassidy? No? Okay. I need a motion to lift the hiring freeze so that Mr. Cassidy can post these.
This is Jim Levesque. I'll make a motion to temporarily lift the hiring freeze so these can be posted.
Have a second.
Carol
Brian
Ashambo,
Leighton.
second.
Carol, seconded. And roll call vote.
Mrs. Ashambo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bertrand,
Yes.
Mr. Levesque?
Yes.
Mr. Leighton?
Yes.
Mrs. Schroeder?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that it's Mr. Cassidy again. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cassidy.
So what is in front of you right now is an MOA between the school committee and Lunenburg Educational Association. And I really hope I can capture what this means. This project has been going on for a long time. And we work very closely with the LEA to get this matter resolved. So just a little bit of history. Well, let me just say this has nothing to do with the current negotiations. This is something that administration and LEA has been working on for a couple of years now. We've run into a number of stumbling blocks at the state level to get some guidance on how to correct an inaccuracy in the contract. So basically, in the LEA contract, there's one section that refers to our master teacher program, and it also refers to our longevity program. So the master teacher program is a program that a teacher works, whether it's a passion project or it's a curriculum project for the district with proven results. And then there is the longevity program, which is a program that rewards teachers on service. So at some point, when I first got here in 2007, we had gotten rumblings that the MTRS, which is the teacher retirement system, had disqualified the stipend that's associated with the master teacher was not retirement eligible. Now, by all accounts, and this is going back toward the end of the tenure of Superintendent Combs, by all accounts, it was everyone's intent that master teacher work was going to be included, or should be included for retirement. Not the longevity, that was just kind of based on service, but actual work over and above the work that the teachers would do during the school day. But when, and I forget who the teacher was, but it was disqualified, even though a few teachers before it was approved. So we had gotten some rumblings from MTRS that it was disapproved. We had gotten absolutely no feedback from the state as far as why it was disqualified. We were going back and forth. We were trying to generate language. So eventually, we did get a hold of one of the lawyers down at MTRS that kind of guided us through this process. And this was just this school year that we were able to kind of nail down some preliminary information. And believe me when I say I'm really condensing a lot of information into 5 minutes because it shouldn't take this long. So the guidance that we got from MTRS is to take master teacher and the longevity program and just make them separate and distinct sections in the contract, have no reference back and forth to the programs within that separate language. And one thing that they really wanted was within the master teacher program is to create eligible programs deemed by MTRS. So some of our master teacher programs in the past were not eligible. So we've expanded the qualified projects that teachers would be eligible to participate in to make it eligible for retirement. So basic, just very quickly, mostly curriculum projects and mentoring projects and improving school culture and just data work. So those were eligible projects deemed by MTRS, and it's work over and above the workday. So within my memorandum, there is absolutely no cost to this new language change. The zero cost, we have the master teacher program, we have the longevity, it's budgeted. All this does is help some of our senior teachers that that have something to offer, basically their expertise and experience, to get into a master teacher project at the end of their career to better the district and have that $5,000 be eligible toward their retirement. So the language that that is in front of you has been voted on by the LEA bargaining group, or body, I guess. It went through the whole body, and it was approved by them. So they agree with this language. And I'm asking that the school committee take a look at this and to do the same, so we can kind of correct this unintentional error within the language. I mean, there was no intent. It was just created, and we're just trying to backfill. This is actually going back, retroing. The intent of this language is to retro back to the start of this contract. So that's the intent of this. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, I would like you to consider voting and approving this MOA.
Does anyone have any questions? I
just had a comment, Brian.
Yeah,
sure. Thank you for the work that you put in for this. It's great that the teachers should be getting paid in their retirement what they did in the contract. So thank you.
Hey, everyone worked together on this. This was, it was a lot of people moving this initiative forward. So thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
No.
Nope. So then I need a motion to ratify it, correct? We
Right.
need to sign and ratify it.
Brian Leighton, I make a motion to ratify the memorandum of understanding between the LEA and the school committee on the master teacher program.
Second.
Jim Levesque,
Carol,
second.
Jim. So Jim, you making the motion, second?
Yeah, I'd seconded.
Okay. Well, Carol seconded it at exactly the same time.
Oh, did she? Okay.
It's so hard to
Yeah.
second.
Yeah. The second is hard because
Either one of us.
I just want one of you to wait, and then
Yes,
I'll call
I'll-
on you. Yeah,
I
that.
can
just
wait.
that.
All right.
And then, okay, so roll call vote.
So roll call vote.
Yeah, roll call vote.
Mrs. Ashambo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bertrand. You're
You're
muted,
on
Mrs.
mute.
Bertrand.
Yes.
Mr.
Okay.
Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yes.
Mrs. Stroka.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Mr. Cassidy.
We got one more.
You have one more, right? The memorandum of understanding.
This one,
You got this one? Okay.
yeah, this one is probably not that long of a story, but so secretarial contract also has some language that is creating some conflict. So Currently, the town hall has made a determination that some of our secretarial staff cannot carry forward balance of vacation days into the next school year, or the next fiscal year. So this is, there is language in their contract that references the carryover of vacation days. But there was a determination made that some of our least senior secretaries, if they have that balance, couldn't bring it, or couldn't carry it forward. So we created some new language that would allow some of our secretaries to carry that language forward. The Secretarial Union has approved it and ratified it on their end. I just happened to run into the president of the Secretarial Union, and it's like, I asked her, like, why is this an issue now? And she did bring up a good point, which is we do have, we've had some turnover in retirement of some of our longtime secretaries. And this language issue really hasn't come up in a number of years. So I wish we used this at the time we negotiated with them last year, but this is kind of a new issue that we just want to just kind of resolve and move forward. I will say, you know, as far as a cost, you know, it's really our intent that this was a benefit that we thought they had anyway. So to quantify it as a cost, I'm not, you know, I didn't put it in writing to say that it's a no cost proposal, but I guess there is cost to carry some vacation time over. But we just took that language for granted, and this is really clarifying the intent that we want secretaries to carry that time forward. So if you have any questions, I'd take them. Otherwise, once again, I would ask the committee to consider ratifying this MOA.
So it's only 2 weeks they can carry over?
Yes.
Was that what they were allowed to do previously?
Yes.
That was what they were doing anyway?
Right.
Okay. So this is just making it crystal clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I need a motion to ratify the memorandum. Jim.
This is Jim Levesque. I move to ratify the memorandum of agreement between the school committee and the Association of Secretaries and Clerks to allow for the transfer of vacation time as presented.
I'll take a second. Brian.
Brian, I'll second.
Okay, we need a roll call vote.
Mrs. Ashambo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bertrand,
Yes.
Mr. Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yes.
and Mrs. Stroka.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
I'll
you.
be back.
Are you coming back? Flash agree? Is it you too? Okay, the FLAC agreement, is that you, Dr. Burnham?
It is. So I provided you just some information as an aside. If the FLAC Collaborative is looking to finish out their fiscal year in the black, which is good news. And there's a draft of a budget that I provided just for your information as well for the next fiscal year. FLAC has been going through a rebranding process over the last year and a half. With the new director, the new executive director, John Demanche coming on, he picked up that project and is driving it to completion. And the rebranding, FLAC will now be known as the Keystone Collaborative. The agreement is an agreement that you see and approve annually. All school committees do. This particular agreement has some revisions. There were two different drafts that I dropped into your folder. One with sections that were highlighted in yellow. Those were the sections that the new executive director reworked. There was a second draft that had some red line and new language added, and that's the language that was recommended by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So the final draft would incorporate the language recommended by the Department of Ed, as well as the revisions that were provided by the new director. So, you know, if you are okay with the language as you see it there, it will be put into a final version with all of that language incorporated. I also dropped into your packets a new document that's been created to be a bit of a brochure or informational packet about the mission and vision of the collaborative, as well as an overview of the programs that they offer. But what I need in terms of action this evening is for you to approve the agreement that's currently in a draft form.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions for Dr. Burnham? No? Do I need someone to make a motion? I need a motion to accept this agreement. Carol?
I will move to approve the new Keystone Agreement, previously as FLAC, as presented this evening.
Do I have a second? Jim?
This is Jim Levesque, I'll second.
All in favor? We'll need a roll call vote.
Mrs. Ashambo?
Yes.
Mrs. Bertrand?
Yes.
Mr. Levesque?
Yes.
Mr. Leighton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Schroka?
Yes. Thank you for that information. Now we're on to donations.
So I have a donation for you to accept this evening in the amount of $113.60 from Box Tops for Education. And that would be going into the gift account for Turkey Hill Elementary School.
Okay. I need a motion to accept the donation from Box Tops for Education. Wendy?
I move that we accept the Box Tops for Education donation with gratitude.
A second. Carol?
Carol Ashambo, I will second it.
Roll call vote, all in favor?
Mrs. Ashambo?
Yes.
Mrs. Bertrand?
Yes.
Mr. Levesque?
Yes.
Mr. Leighton?
Yeah.
And Mrs. Schroka?
Yes. Keep cutting the box tops. Oh, they're virtual now. So now to old business, we have the fiscal year 20 quarterly budget report. Oh, Mr. Cassidy.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Yeah. So here's your quarterly report for our expenditures for FY20. There'll be a final report at some point in June, in July, as soon as we do our final expenditures. So I just want to go over a couple negatives. I usually start by addressing these, and they're highlighted in yellow, so you don't have to hunt for them. So one thing I want to bring to your attention on page 2, there is a negative balance at our Turkey Hill regular substitutes. So there's a maternity leave that is impacting that line item. So the person works for our Title I program, and I don't have a Title I sub account, so I'm having the substitute hit the local account, and then at the end of the year, I will transfer the money from the grant into the local budget to reconcile that balance. Also on page 2, there's a negative balance on the master stipend program. So the reason why that is in the negative is that one of our master teacher programs, our mentoring program, is paid out of one of our title grants. And at the end of the year, I will do an expenditure transfer to reconcile that negative balance. So I would just want to let you know that those accounts will grow in the negative, but by the final report, they'll be reconciled. On page 4, I had to dig up some information. We've got a negative balance on our emergency expenditures. And the negative balance is $8,889.50. That negative balance is directly related to the glass replacement at the over at the middle school collaborative room. So what we used our local account to pay for the replacement of that glass. I just want to let you know we had to pay a $1,000 deductible to get to cover the insurance for that replacement. The balance, the negative balance that's showing in that account is essentially the amount that we're anticipating that we're going to receive from the insurance company. We haven't received it yet, but there was the only place where I could where we could put that expense in the local budget. So hopefully, I really anticipate that it will be resolved by the end of the school year, but I will certainly keep an eye on that account for you and give you an update. But we are anticipating that money. I'm really hoping that we get it before June 30th. So that's why that account is in the negative.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Cassidy? No? No one's waving. We just need to accept this as presented, correct? So I need a motion to accept this as presented. Anyone waving their hand? Wendy, you're on my big screen. I'm going to call on you.
I make a motion to accept the proposal, the budget proposal as outlined.
Second, Brian.
Brian, second.
All in favor, roll call vote.
Mrs. Ashambo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bertrand,
Yes.
Mr. Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yeah.
Mrs. Schroka.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Cassidy.
Could I give the committee just a 3-minute snapshot of what the end of the year looks like?
Yep, okay.
So we are working very quickly on last-minute purchases to take care of some of the outstanding balances, or not balances, but yeah, just anticipated balances in some of our accounts. So we are moving forward on some purchase of curriculum materials. Mr. Launders taking care of purchase of some supplies for the start of the school year. Also summer supplies for cleaning supplies. we are looking, we still have that, it's about $99,000 worth of salaries that we have to bring into the local budget as far as since the closure for our extended day program and our cafeteria staff. So we'll move those in toward the end of the year to get them out of the revolving accounts. We are looking at some of the possibility of bringing some eligible and allowable costs from our school choice into the local budget. This is something that we look at every single year. And I know if the superintendent hasn't said it, I'll speak for her, which is if there's any balances, we will be contemplating looking at the purchase of Chromebooks, kind of like the last purchase of Chromebooks. Somewhere in there, we are also contemplating looking at, it's called prepaid tuition for some of our out-of-district students. So under the law in Massachusetts, if districts have some balances in their local accounts, we can use that to pay for out-of-district students' tuition for next year. So we may be able to reduce some of our costs next year. So I'm not there yet. So as we get closer to the end of the school year, and I'm sure of the balances, I'll know how much money that we can use for out-of-district tuition. If nothing else, those costs will be shown in the final report, and I can report out on that as well. So that's part of our strategy right now to bring the balance down as low as possible. There is a lot of uncertainty. I'm not telling anybody on this committee something that you already don't know about next year's budget. Not sure what the state looks like. Our 1.58 budget presented by the town manager and blessed by the finance committee. So we've got the support there. There's just some uncertainty about final numbers on the state. And we've just got to we're in a very good position going into next year. That's what I'm advising the committee at this point. So that's our update. It's going to be a very busy June for the business office as we look at final purchases, as we look out at closing out POs, as we look at just the future of FY21. And so we will, every time that we meet, we will provide an update on the information that we have for you. Thank you.
Thank you. We have reports. Do we have a report from FinCom, Carol?
We do.
Thank you.
Their last meeting was on the 14th of May, and there's still no official guidance from the state regarding the FY21 state aid. Our town manager has prepared for more than a 10% cut in state aid. There are rumors that the cut could be as much as 20 to 25%. Senator Tran agrees that that is a possibility. Representative Hay has stated the need to be very conservative. The funding of the capital plan, which I assume Jim will get into afterwards, has already been halved, and that may be brought up again at town meeting. The Finance Committee is still backing the 1.58% budget. Should the state aid be cut 20 to 25%, everything would need to be reassessed. The select board met last night, and they are going ahead with the town meeting on June 13th, pending the state allows it. And that's what I've got.
Capital planning report, Jim?
Yeah, so capital planning met with the finance committee, as Carol had mentioned. They were questioning some of the need for some of the items that were targeted to spend next year. They did not make a recommendation one way or another as to whether they would support the capital plan as presented, which includes things like the Turkey Hill abatement, the asbestos abatement. They were wondering if we could push that off another year. They did not make any decisions one way or another to endorse or not. They wanted that to be brought to the public and let the public make those decisions. So at this point, we're still looking at half of what we had originally approved, still going to town meeting.
Okay, and then town meeting is when it will be decided.
Correct.
Okay. Which is scheduled to happen on June 13, depending on the state guidelines.
And I don't know how they can do that and what phase, the phases are supposed to be 6 weeks apart. I don't know. Math doesn't work.
It had nothing to do with the June 28th. Okay, all right.
Well, I can tell you that this afternoon, I had a team of folks over in the auditorium, including a member of the Board of Health, to take a look at how they might arrange for seating and the microphones and so on, and be socially distanced appropriately. And it looks like they've got a plan that's doable.
Good. That's good.
Somebody being proactive, that's great.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now we're on to public comment, open seating, anything that falls under the school committee. Does anyone on the board have public? Oh, Jim has public comment.
I did. I had reached out to Nadine, who I guess reached out to Liz and Mr. Cassidy and probably the superintendent about donating my daughter's excess lunch. I don't know if if there's a mechanism that's being developed or explored to allow other senior parents to be able to do that.
I thought I saw it in an email.
Yes. So
Was that on an email? I must have missed that one.
Mr. McGrath included that in his bi-monthly email out to families, and indicated that if anybody were so inclined that they could donate their balance. And we thought that we would give a little bit of time for that, and also bring them all together as one bundle, if you will,
Okay.
a total amount that has been donated to be applied back to unpaid balances.
I don't know how I missed that.
I thought I saw it in there. I did.
It was in last Friday's.
Yeah.
It was way.
Yeah,
it was,
I see it. I see it now. Yes, I must missed that one.
Okay.
I probably just skipped over it because they were probably wanting money. And I knew I already had an excess in there. Okay, thank you. I'll reach out then to Tina, unless she's already been told.
All right. Do we have any public comment? Any other public comment from the committee? No? Do we have any public comment from the public? Is there any public? No.
Nobody's here.
I think we're alone.
I think we are. Okay.
We did have a young man online
did.
for
We
quite a
did.
while. It was
Huh, that was
it was
impressive.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna
It's
go
nice
into,
to see citizen engagement at that age.
executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with union personnel. I think we have another Zoom, right,
Yes.
for that. We have another, we're gonna log you off and log on. Okay,
Correct.
okay.
Correct.
I'll see you on the other Zoom. Oh,
We need a motion to
adjourn?
adjourn now.
Yeah, do we?
Do we adjourn this one?
We need a motion. Yep.
Yeah, we need a
Then go
motion.
into executive
Sure.
session.
Go into executive
Not to
session,
resume.
Executive session.
not to resume. I know,
So-
not to come back and resume. It's First
So
on my
Brian
agenda.
Leighton, and I'll make a motion to go to executive session and not to resume and close the meeting at the end of executive session.
This is Jim Levesque, I'll second. Oh,
Okay.
sorry. I
Let's
thought
do it.
Carol was her hand.
Okay, let's do it. We need roll call vote.
Mrs. Shambo,
Yes,
Mrs. Bertrand,
Yes.
Mr. Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yes.
and Mrs. Schroka.
Yes.